At my brother's wedding, I took a road trip while my family gasped. You can't just leave. My mom hissed. This is a disaster. I returned and revealed a secret. Their shock was unbelievable as I exposed the truth that changed everything. You can't just leave. My mother's face contorted with shock as I threw my overnight bag into the trunk of my car. Around us, wedding guests in formal attire stared, whispering behind champagne flutes. My brother stood on the steps of the country club, his new wife clutching his arm, both wearing identical expressions of disbelief. Watch me, I said, slamming the trunk shut. The heavy thud punctuated my decision with finality. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear for the first time in days. The afternoon sun glinted off the polished cars in the parking lot, a perfect day for a wedding. A perfect day to finally break free. You'll regret this, my father called out, his voice carrying across the manicured lawn. If you leave now, don't bother coming back. I paused with my hand on the car door. That threat had worked my entire life, but not today. Today, I had reached my limit. I already regret staying as long as I did, I replied, sliding into the driver's seat. As I pulled away, I caught a glimpse of my brother's face in the rearview mirror. For a second, I thought I saw understanding there. Or maybe it was relief. I should probably explain how I ended up fleeing my own brother's wedding. Michael and I were never close growing up, 3 years apart and worlds different in personality. He was the golden child, captain of the debate team, straight-A student, and now a successful attorney, married to the daughter of my father's business partner. A perfect alliance, as my father called it. Me? I was always the family disappointment, the one who changed majors 3 times, who worked just a job instead of pursuing a career, who remained stubbornly single at 32. Every family gathering was an exercise in endurance, smiling through backhanded compliments and navigating loaded questions about my lack of direction. When Michael asked me to be a groomsman, I accepted out of obligation rather than enthusiasm. I should have known better. Have you ever found yourself trapped in a role your family assigned you years ago, with no hope of ever changing their perception? That feeling of suffocation, of being seen but never truly known? If so, you'll understand why what happened next felt inevitable. The wedding weekend started with the rehearsal dinner, where I was seated at the far end of the table, next to distant relatives who kept asking if I was still working at that place. My father gave a toast praising Michael's achievements, while my mother dabbed at tears of pride. Neither acknowledged my existence. Later that night, I overheard my aunt telling a cousin, at least one of the children turned out right. They laughed, not realizing I was around the corner. I retreated to my hotel room and stared at the ceiling until dawn, wondering why I had come at all. The morning of the wedding brought more of the same. While helping set up, I suggested an adjustment to the seating arrangement to accommodate an elderly guest. My mother dismissed it immediately, only to implement the exact same change when Michael suggested it an hour later. When I pointed this out, she said, "Don't start making a scene. This is your brother's day." During the pre-wedding photos, the photographer kept positioning me at the edge of group shots. "We can crop you out if needed," he joked, but no one corrected him. My father reviewed the photos and suggested, maybe just a few without him? As if I wasn't standing right there. When I went to congratulate Michael in the groom's suite, I found him surrounded by his college friends. "Hey, the black sheep made it," one of them called out. Michael laughed along. "Didn't think you'd actually show up," he said. "Figured you'd find some excuse." That's when I realized I wasn't included because I was loved. I was included to play a role, the family failure, the cautionary tale that made everyone else feel better about their choices. Have you ever reached that breaking point where you suddenly see with perfect clarity? When have you decided that enough was enough in your own life? Share your moments of realization in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories of when you finally stood up for yourself. Standing in that suffocating groom's suite, watching my brother and his friends laugh at my expense, something shifted inside me. Years of accepting my designated role, of trying to earn approval that would never come, crystallized into a single thought. I don't belong here, and I never did. As the ceremony began, I went through the motions, standing where directed, smiling when appropriate. But my mind was racing. replaying moments from our childhood. Michael getting a new car for graduation, while I received a lecture about responsibility. My father attending every one of Michael's soccer games, but never once coming to my art exhibitions. My mother proudly displaying Michael's law school diploma, but forgetting to frame my bachelor's degree. During the vows, I caught my cousin taking a video of me, zooming in on my face. For the family group chat, she whispered to someone, they've got bets on whether he'll mess something up. That was it, the final straw. As guests moved to the reception, I quietly slipped away to my room, changed out of my tuxedo, and packed my bag. I wasn't going to sit through hours of toasts celebrating Michael while serving as the family's inside joke. Driving away from the country club, I had no destination in mind. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for years suddenly lifted. Each mile brought clarity. I turned off my phone after the first dozen missed calls and just drove. 3 hours later, I stopped at a roadside diner. The place was nearly empty. Just a few truckers and an elderly couple in a corner booth. I ordered coffee and sat by the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Rough day? The waitress, Nancy according to her name tag, refilled my cup without asking. You could say that. I just left my brother's wedding. She raised an eyebrow but didn't judge. Sometimes the hardest place to be is where everyone expects you to be someone you're not. That simple statement from a stranger hit me harder than any therapy session I'd ever had. We talked for almost an hour as the diner emptied out. Nancy told me about leaving her hometown 20 years ago after her family refused to accept her divorce. Never regretted it, she said. Family should lift you up, not tear you down. As I was leaving, she handed me a napkin with an address scribbled on it. My brother runs a little inn about 2 hours north of here. Tell him Nancy sent you. Might be a good place to clear your head. That conversation was the first of many unexpected connections I made during what turned into a 2-week road trip. Each person I met seemed to appear exactly when I needed their perspective. The retired teacher at a bookstore who talked about finding his purpose after being fired. The young couple at a hiking trail who had eloped rather than have the wedding their families demanded. It wasn't until I reached a small coastal town that I finally turned my phone back on. Over 100 notifications flooded in, voicemails, texts, even emails. Most were angry demands to return or accusations of selfishness. But one message stood out, from my brother. Can we talk? That's all it said. I called him from the balcony of my motel room, watching waves crash against the shore. You've caused quite the scandal, he said when he answered. His tone wasn't angry, just tired. That wasn't my intention. Wasn't it? There was a long pause. The thing is, I get it. I've always gotten it. What do you mean? Why do you think I never stood up for you? It was easier to let you be the family scapegoat. As long as they were focused on your supposed failures, no one noticed when I didn't measure up. The admission stunned me. Your life seems pretty perfect from where I'm standing. He laughed, a hollow sound. I'm a lawyer because Dad wanted it. I married Catherine because it was expected. My entire life is built on pleasing other people. Why are you telling me this now? Because you did what I never had the courage to do. You walked away. His voice cracked slightly. And seeing you drive off, I was jealous. Do you think family patterns can ever truly change, or are we destined to play the roles assigned to us? What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below. That conversation with Michael changed everything. For the first time, we spoke as equals, not as the golden child and the disappointment. He revealed that our parents had been beside themselves, not necessarily because they missed me, but because my absence had disrupted their carefully constructed family narrative. Dad keeps saying you embarrassed him, Michael said. Mom's worried what the extended family will think. And what do you think? I asked. There was a long pause. I think you're braver than I'll ever be. After we hung up, I sat watching the ocean for hours, processing this shift in our relationship. The next day, Michael texted me a photo. He and Catherine were taking an impromptu honeymoon road trip of their own. Following your lead, the message read. I continued my journey, driving up the coast. In a small art gallery, I met a former corporate lawyer who now made pottery and taught classes in her studio. Best decision I ever made, she told me, hands covered in clay. My family didn't speak to me for a year when I quit the firm. Now they brag about their artistic daughter. Her words gave me hope that perhaps roles weren't as fixed as I'd thought. 2 weeks after leaving the wedding, I finally headed home. Not to my parents' house, but to my apartment in the city. The night I arrived, there was a knock at my door. Michael stood there, looking both nervous and determined. "Catherine and I are moving," he announced. "I've applied for a position with a nonprofit legal aid organization. It's what I've always wanted to do." "What did Mom and Dad say?" "They don't know yet." He smiled, a genuine smile I hadn't seen since we were kids. I figured I'd ask my brave sibling for advice on breaking the news. We stayed up until dawn, talking about our childhood, our parents' expectations, and our futures. For the first time, I felt like I had a brother, not a competitor. In the months that followed, our family dynamics shifted dramatically. Our parents initially refused to speak to me, then tried to use Michael as a go-between. When that failed, they resorted to guilt and manipulation. But something had changed. Their tactics no longer worked on either of us. Michael and Catherine moved across the country for his new job. I enrolled in a master's program I'd always been interested in, but had never pursued, fearing disapproval. We both began setting boundaries with our parents, clear, firm limits on what behavior we would accept. It wasn't easy. There were tearful phone calls, angry accusations, and periods of silence. But gradually, incrementally, our parents began to adapt. Not because they suddenly understood or approved, but because they realized they had no choice if they wanted us in their lives. At Thanksgiving, 6 months after the wedding, we all gathered at Michael and Catherine's new home. The tension was palpable, but so was the possibility of change. When my father started to make a comment about my finally going back to school, my mother touched his arm and said quietly, "Let's just enjoy having everyone together." It was a small moment, barely noticeable. But in our family, it was revolutionary. That night, as I helped with dishes, my mother stood beside me, awkwardly drying a plate. "I'm trying," she said simply. "I don't always understand your choices, but I'm trying." It wasn't an apology or a transformation, but it was a beginning. Sometimes the most important journeys aren't the ones that take us to new places, but the ones that change how we see ourselves. My impromptu road trip lasted only 2 weeks, but its impact continues to ripple through my life. What would have happened if I'd stayed at that wedding, swallowing my feelings as I'd done so many times before? Would Michael have found the courage to change his path? Would I have ever broken free of the role I'd been assigned? I'll never know for certain, but I do know this. Sometimes walking away is the only way to find your way back. Not to where you were, but to where you were always meant to be. Have you ever had to leave something behind to find yourself? What unexpected journeys have changed your perspective on family relationships? Share your stories below. Perhaps your experience will be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.